And good morning, guys. Welcome back to the channel, back with the Wandering Mariner. So today we're talking about tax optimization as a merchant mariner. And this is super important. So there is a great question I got received yesterday. And this was from Chime Time 394. It says, I have a long-term question about tax optimization because contracts and deployments seem to be 9 months minimum. Not necessarily true. Contracts can go everything from 2 weeks to 9 months to a year, or how long you want them to go. But they're not really a 9 months minimum for most. But I just want to hit that while we're there. And some aspire to live in areas like Baja, Mexico, living abroad, very common for mariners. So, what should one do about state residency if one does not intend to live in the U.S. during days off or during their time off? And even if one does choose to live in the U.S., should they own or rent a property like in the state of Florida? And there is a myth that kind of runs around the maritime fields that says, merchant mariners don't have to pay state tax. And that is definitely a myth. Depending on the state of residency that you claim, you will have to pay taxes. And like death and taxes, they are required. But not every state is created equally. So there are states like Texas, Florida, Nevada, Washington, South Dakota, Wyoming, and Alaska where there is no state tax, which these are great tax havens for mariners. And lots of mariners do end up choosing these states as their state residence. There's also non-resident requirements for certain states, i.e. Tennessee and New Hampshire. So in those two states, if you do not earn your income in those states, you don't have to pay taxes, state tax, if you've earned it outside the state. So if you're out on ship working, most likely you're not going to pay state tax. So that is beneficial. But in those states, I think you do have to pay taxes on any profits that you earned on your stocks or investments and whatnot still. But otherwise, you don't have to pay state tax, which is super cool. So kind of going back to the question here, he says, what should you do about state residency if one does not intend to live in the U.S. during time off? So when you first get hired by, let's say, Military Sealift Command, they're going to have you fill out your tax forms. And during that time, you're going to have to say what state you are a resident of. And residency is established by a couple simple factors, okay? One is you actually live in the state. You are physically there all the time. Some states have requirements that you have to live there so many months a year to be a resident and whatnot. This is if you want to go back to one, let's say you get hired by Military Sealift Command, you want to claim one of those previous states as your residency. What you need to do first is you need to go to that state if you want to claim it. So if you are from Wisconsin and you want to change your residency to Florida, you have to physically go to Florida first. And to establish residency, there's several ways you could do it, and one's kind of a hack. So first way is, one, get a driver's license. Once you have a driver's license, you are a state resident. So you have to go there. You got to have some kind of physical address typically to get a driver's license from that state. Or you have to register to vote in that state. You have to show up and say, I'm living here. I would like to register to vote. Once they register you to vote, then you are considered a state resident. Other ways that you can prove your residency will be through different documentation. That's utility bills, lease agreements, rental contracts, any kind of proof that you have a physical address. Now, if you are living abroad, and even, I don't care where you're living, if you're a mariner and you don't have a home, right? The typical like house that you are owning, or a place that you want all your mail, or somebody's like checking your stuff. A good way to establish a physical address can be go to a mail forwarding service in that state that you want to reside. Set up more or less kind of like a P.O. box, but it's an actual address. So your mail all goes to this address, right? And then that mail forwarding service will send your mail anywhere you're at. So if you are living on board ship that's now on the East Coast, you can go to the mail forwarding service, tell them, send all my mail here, right? So your mail goes to Florida, your address is established as that mail forwarding service, and then your mail will be sent off to you on whatever ship you're working. And as you move around to different ships and different contracts, all you got to do is contact your mail forwarding service and say, hey, I want to shift my stuff and have my mail delivered here now. So that is a very advantageous to take advantage of the taxes. And like I said, the state of Wisconsin, I pay 8% taxes. In 13 years, I would have saved myself 1 year of annual income by just changing my residency to a state like Florida. Now, but that's to each and everybody's decision to kind of decide on what you want to do and where you want to live. But it is not uncommon for mariners that are living abroad and in other countries and in other places to go ahead and set up their residency in tax haven states, and this is not illegal or anything wrong with it. Same thing like Donald Trump did when he had moved his residency to Florida. Tax havens, people are smart about moving their taxes. Now, when you live in places like Florida and some of these other states, there is other taxes that you pay if you end up residing there. So, but to each their own. Hopefully that answers your question. If you guys have any more questions or comments, please leave them below. Your questions usually end up being my content. Make sure you like, subscribe, and we'll hit you on the next one. Peace.